Hi, I'm Dave Kahle. Welcome to this Christian Business Insights podcast show where my goal is to provide you with practical, actionable ideas to help you create businesses and careers of excellence and at the same time multiply your influence for the kingdom. I have been a Christian in business for over 30 years, and I have personally and contractually consulted with over 500 different sales organizations. So in these podcasts, I combine the lessons that I have learned with an out-of-the-box experience and perspective on Christianity that you will find challenging. And we put that together to provide you with practical insights and ideas that you can use to live better and lead better. Welcome to the journey. Hi, this is Dave. So if you got a Christian business and you want to expand, what's the best way to fund that expansion? Well, if your business is at all successful, sooner or later you're going to confront this question. And at some point, you'll need to fund your business growth. You need a larger space or more computers, more sophisticated software, more equipment, hire new people, etc., etc. You need to invest in training and developing your people. I mean, there are multiple reasons why you need to grow your business. But all of this requires an upfront investment of money. And you do so with the hope of bringing a return and growing your business's size and profitability and impact. And of course, investment is made with the risk that it may never work out the way that you're planning. So let's say that's your situation. You've prayed about it, you've run the numbers, you considered all the alternatives, and you've come up to a set of conclusions. Number one, you should grow your business. Number two, this is the time and opportunity to take the next step. And number three, it requires more money than you have. So now you're faced with a decision. How do you fund it? Where does that money come from? And there is an answer out there in the world of worldly wisdom. Depending on the size of your business, the conventional wisdom says that you go to the bank and borrow the money. Does that knee-jerk reaction, off-the-cuff advice, does that hold true for a Christian business? Well, there's some nuances, and let's look at those first, and then we're going to dig directly into that question. In our 21st century business world, we should recognize some nuances. Not all debt is the same, and some debt is less onerous than others. For our purposes, debt can be characterized and classified in several important ways. So when considering taking on debt, we should keep these issues in mind. First, of course, the relative amount. It's one thing to owe $1,000 and it's another to owe $1 million. If you're a sole proprietor, that $1 million debt may be staggering. However, if you're a Fortune 500 company, it may not even be noticeable. For a business, the real issue is the amount of debt payment relative to the cash flow. The greater the ratio of cash flow to payment, the more acceptable the debt is. For example, if you're bringing in $100,000 a month, then $1,000 a month in debt is certainly acceptable. However, if you're only bringing in $5,000 a month, that $1,000 monthly payment is 20% of your cash flow, and that's risky. So clearly, the smaller the percentage of your cash flow to debt, the less dangerous that debt is. One sort of proven way to look at it is the debt to asset ratio. And it just looks at your business assets and the total amount of debt, and that ratio is instructive as to how much you should be borrowing. So that's the first issue. Second issue is the purpose of the debt. It's one thing to borrow money to acquire a new piece of production equipment, and it's another to do so that you can redecorate the corner office. A long-term lease on a production facility is one form of debt. Credit card for entertainment expenses is quite another. So the purpose of the debt is another issue. The means and type of commitment for repayment. For example, you may create a royalty payment for a lender where he's repaid by a certain dollar amount or percentage of sales of a product or service. In that case, the lender assumes the risk of bad sales and assumes the risk of little repayment. If the product doesn't sell, he doesn't get his money back. If it does, he makes an excellent return. On the other hand, you may decide to personally borrow $100,000 and put your house up for collateral. So that's an issue, something to consider. Here's another one. I don't think many people consider that, and that is the quality and type of lender. It's one thing to borrow the money from your family and friends, and quite another from the bank across town. It's one thing to have a vendor finance your purchase of a piece of equipment, and quite another to acquire the funds from the loan shark downtown. And then, of course, there's the cost of the debt. The interest rate that you pay to the lender for using his or her money can take lots of different forms, from the points you pay at the beginning of a mortgage to the penalties you pay for missing a payment. It's common sense to understand that lower cost debt is preferable to higher cost debt. But for a business, not all debt is the same. We can use these 5 criteria to assess the quality of the debt we're considering and to alter the terms in our favor when possible. Now, one other thought, and as before we go any further, let's put the issue of debt into a larger framework. Borrowing, in all its forms, is a way of bringing other people's money into the business. For whatever reason, you have a need for money, but your business doesn't have enough of its own. So you need other people's money to fund some aspect of your business. Borrowing is one choice, but it is not the only choice. So let's talk about options. You can assess other people's money in various ways. You can sell equity. You can, for example, sell a portion of the business and have a minority stockholder. Or you can create a limited partnership for a specific purpose and sell partnership shares in it. Or you can sell an interest in a specific product line or a production line or a branch office, for example. When you need other people's money, borrowing and creating debt is only one of the choices. If you must acquire other people's money, think carefully about the structure of it and use the most favorable structure. Let me illustrate with this example. Let's say you own a tool and die shop and have a customer who will commit to regular purchases from you, but you need to acquire a new piece of production equipment in order to service the order. The equipment is going to cost $100,000 or about 15% of your current cash flow. So the customer will commit to buy about $8,000 a month at a 50% margin. That will spin off about $4,000 a month. If you applied that totally to the $100,000, you could pay it off in about 25 or 30 months, depending on the interest rate. You're pretty sure you want to do this if you can figure out how to finance it. So here are the possibilities. Number one, you can use a royalty. Under this structure, you find someone to provide you with the $100,000. Instead of a repayment schedule with interest, you offer a royalty of $1 per unit produced by the machine until that person has received, let's say, $115,000. The terms are such that if you don't sell enough to pay back his investment, you don't owe anything more. It's his risk. He basically is investing in the machine and you by taking some risk in return for a greater return. So you're transferring the risk and some of the profit to the investor and agreeing to less gross profit for a limited period of time in return. Now, this has the advantage that your debt is tied to a royalty. You have no personal responsibility. So if your customer goes out of business and the machine becomes idle, the investor loses, as do you. Still, you can sleep at night. At the same time, you bring a knowledgeable investor into the business. He or she can make a determination about the viability of your deal. If it doesn't look good to the investor, it may not be right for you. There may be aspects of it that you have overlooked but seem obvious to him. You may get a free analysis of the arrangement as part of the deal. So, number one, royalty. Number two, limited partners. Now, this is similar to a royalty, only it requires the creation of a new business entity, a limited partnership, and the partners have an interest in the losses and gains of that entity. Now, in this case, you find a group, say 4 or 5 people, to invest $25,000 each, because remember, we're trying to get $100,000 here. So each one invests $25,000. You form a limited partnership to buy the machine and contractually agree to split the proceeds of the machine's output 50-50 or some other formula between you and them. You are the general partner, they are the limited partners. Limited partners have no say in the running of the business or the machine. They are silent, limited. Limited partners own a percentage of the partnership and losses as well as profits that pass through to them and the agreed upon rate. One advantage of this structure is the same as with the royalty. You bring experienced outside people into your business, and they view your offer from a different perspective. If you cannot get anyone to come with the partnership, maybe something's wrong with the deal. Now, the limited partners have no stake in the greater business. They only have an interest in the machine or what is the focus of the partnership. So if the deal goes sour, your other assets are safe. This arrangement has the same impact on your emotions as the royalty. The investors understand if those things don't go the way you expect them to, they may lose money. You are not personally responsible for their investments. I funded the publication of my first book way back in the early 90s with this approach. I didn't want to borrow the money, so I created a limited partnership and sold shares to 5 of my customers. They received a fixed percentage of the gross profit. This worked out well for me as those customers showed enough confidence in me and my message to put their money behind it. They helped market the book and eventually got double their money back. I published the book debt-free, and it eventually became the best-selling book ever published in that niche. Now, this structure cost me more, but I didn't mind, as my book blessed the investors, blessed the readers, and was one of the stimulants that led to the growth of my business for years. And eventually, when they received double their money back, which was the terms, the partnership went away. So a limited partnership is a viable alternative. Here's another one, an equity sale. So under this structure, you sell a percentage of the company for $100,000. You own nothing, but you own a little less of the business. Now, this may not be as intimidating as it sounds. Minority stockholders in a closely held business have little say in the management of the business unless you want them to. If you pay dividends every year, then you get a little smaller piece of the larger pie. If and when you sell the business, you receive a little less as a percentage of what should be a little more in absolute dollars. The advantage is that you owe nothing. You've attached no debt to the company. Now, all of these structures that I'm talking about here, royalty, limited partnership, equity sale, bring you capital you need to buy the new machine without creating debt that you are personally liable to pay back. That isn't the same as the next two possibilities of a secured loan is one, secured loan. So you make an agreement with the bank to lend you the money to buy the machine. The bank attaches a lien on the machine. If you don't make the payments, they come and get the machine. Now, another variation of this is have the machine vendor do the same thing. You agree to pay for the machine over the next 24 to 30 months. You make monthly principal and interest payments, and if you miss the payments, the vendor comes and gets the machine back. The advantage of working with the bank is that you have a credible outside source look at the debt and affirm that it looks viable. Otherwise, they would not lend it to you. The disadvantages are all the disadvantages of debt. You will pay interest on the loan. You will have the obligation to make those monthly payments regardless of the success of the project. The one somewhat mitigating factor is the machine is security for the loan. If they take back the machine, depending on how the loan is written, you are out from under the payments. You have ruined your credit rating, you've lost the bank, but you may be free of the necessity to pay back any remaining balances. The vendor may be a bit more eager to do this deal with you as they are making money on the side of on the sale of the machine as well as the financing. Think of automotive dealers, for example. They may not take as critical a look at the viability of the deal as the bank would, but because of the profit on the machine, they may be easier to negotiate more favorable terms. And then the last option, so we talked about 4 options. We talked about a royalty, limited partnership, equity sale, secured loan. Here's the 5th, an unsecured loan. In this structure, the bank gives you the money and doesn't attach the machine as collateral. They may provide the money for your signature. Now, for a Christian, no matter what happens, you have the obligation to pay back this loan. Regardless of the life and viability of the machine, you've given your word and are on the hook for the total amount of principal and interest no matter what. So here's the bottom line. Go slowly when it comes to putting the company into debt. Consider the alternative approaches. There are multiple ways to acquire other people's money. Okay? Hey, if you'd like to dig deeper into this issue, I have an ebook that I call The Christian Guide to Financing Business Growth. It's a free ebook. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can just click on the link and get the free ebook. Okay? That's it. We're done. Bye-bye.